Almost every vault in Fallout is horrifying, because that's the point. They were full of experiments meant to test what people would do in horrible situations. But there are some that actually held results. Those will make you question the sanity of the devs that created them. So, with that cheerful note out of the way, let's go traumatize ourselves. Vault 3, one of the first vaults that was constructed by our buddies over the Vault-Tec Corporation, assigned to the broader Mojave region, and along with a couple of other vaults, was only for control. This means that we won't find any kind of hidden parameters, situations, or social experiments, dangerous people, or an enraged AI, just a plain old shelter for the bombs. As some sort of bonus data, the control vaults are considered as 17. Along all the wasteland, they don't range from 1 to 17 as the pattern would be easily recognized, so they are randomized through all the vaults. This is seen as some sort of way of preserving some of humanity, and these people are the favorite of factions like the Enclave or the Brotherhood in a certain way, as they are supposed to never be contaminated by the upper part of the world, the surface. In this section, the TV series shows a bit more about Vault-Tec than the games. We just know bits here and there, but they have a lot of different goals and experiments going out, so I find pretty normal to find these types of vaults. In case everything gets out of hand, you can maintain a bit of the humanity alive at least. Still, this doesn't mean that nothing happened. And at the end, the experiment was how long the residents would go without opening the doors, and that ended sometime after the 23rd century. At some point, a water leak appeared, forcing the residents to go out and seek help. They actually succeeded and established a good connection with the outside world, peacefully, and started being a center of trade. But this also took the interest of the raiders of the tribe, the Fiends. They conned the vault dwellers and got themselves in, killed everyone, and made that vault into an impenetrable base of operations, killing numerous people and basically growing stronger and becoming a lot more dangerous, eventually starting to destabilize NCR and the local population. So this proved that the vault dwellers were easily killed because their fast trust to outsiders. Eventually, the courier got here and cleaned it out, but the original inhabitants were long gone. A bit of a doubt, how long can you go drinking radiation without knowing? Vault 12. That question also was asked by someone at Vault-Tec, so here we are, constructed under Bakersfield, the sprawling metropolis. In appearance, it had every amenity that any vault dweller could imagine, and even more. The most interesting of the lot were the fact of having fresh water every day and last for whatever time you needed. More than 15,000 gallons per day, that was the quota that the filter was capable of achieving. All those that earned the right to enter were really prepared, earning the pressed vault suit for the efforts. Still, everything didn't matter, as our buddies from Vault-Tec had another plan for them. All started on October 21st, 2077, and the people affected by this were the population of Bakersfield, started by the psychosis of every shelter around being sealed. They were a really fast and desperate bunch of people. They basically forced their way into this vault. Now, you are asking yourself, wait a minute, how exactly can a group of normal population force the entry to a vault? That's the catch. The experiment first part was that the door was designed as a prop. By design, it wasn't supposed to close, and that exactly happened. The radiation flooded in, and by the moment, a lot died and a lot more were ghoulified. The summer of 2083, the survivors left the shelter. The others that didn't want to founded the city of Necropolis. In the end, the sole purpose of this vault was to attract people, and now inside, all the radiation entered directly without any escape, effectively showing the process of radiation exposure, from liquefying some people to ghoulifying others. A lot happened to this vault, but sticking only to the experiment, a certain breakthrough happened here, and you can see it as the player. When you are exploring the vault, you will meet several glowing ghouls that ignore you. Highly uncommon for these types of ghouls. Strangely, you can get the water chip and they will attack you. So this experiment shows that the glowing ones can demonstrate at least minor retaining of their mental faculties, as they won't attack you if you don't pose a threat to the water source they have. And even if you repair the water pump, you can get the water chip and still not be attacked. What is living inside a sort of color code with induced ideologies? Well, brace for it. Vault 19. In my opinion, this is one of the most interesting experiments, as they have an interesting idea. Not the classic type of experiment where you have X quantity of resources and need to live with that without killing each other. The vault dwellers of this vault were segregated from two different colored sectors, red and blue. Limited contact between both groups, and another unique characteristic, having two overseers, for the red and the blue sector. As I explained before, the general idea is having sides, and everything kind of revolves around that. I will try to explain in better depth, but the most important part is that now talking particularly about the inhabitants, they were part of a social experiment based on inducing paranoia in a mental and subtle way. I mean, that without violence and chemicals means, so they had to live with a deep fear that was organically adapted by them. The day-to-day here was subliminal messaging, different noises every X quantity of time. They also had a neutral side doctor that helped both sides, for the better or the worse, and we may never know if it was paranoia or actual experimentation. But some terminals says that strange air drafts from the vents happened from time to time. A simple premise was found in this vault. Strange things happened from time to time, and almost always something or someone pinned this on the rival group, like flickering lights on certain patterns to sort of induce the people with the impression of having a meaning behind. To nobody's surprise, everything was orchestrated by both overseers, and in the end, the experiment was a complete success. The proof is that in Fallout New Vegas, we can explore this vault. We can find multiple problems explained through terminals, and the most vocal was that someone disrupted the water source. Obviously, every band blamed the other. We will never know the truth. In the moment that we enter here, we won't find any vault dweller, just raiders and around the vault geckos. This tells us that at some point the last team, or maybe people from both sides, abandoned or killed each other. Most probably the second, as every terminal heavily blames the other team for any problem that the vault had. The point is that nobody lived or stayed on the vault to tell the tale. Okay, now we are right on my alley. Anyone up for a blackjack game? Vault 21. A vault constructed for housing civilians? Yeah, all the vaults were kind of the same in that objective, but still, as also most of them, this one has a trick. And being in the remains of Las Vegas, care to guess? That's right, my boy, gambling, but not in the fun, cool way as the casinos and making big bucks. No, this is an experiment in a social sense, so that would be very plain. As you know, the casinos and basically gambling are in mathematical terms a certain number of chances of winning and losing and you fighting with the odds, so that is kind of the central point of this vault. With everything about this vault goes by chance. Only the primary functions that maintain you alive are, well, perpetual. If you want something or someone wants something from you, but we will tackle that in more detail later. Well, going into the vault details, first of all, this one works. Everyone was safe and all when the bombs crashed, and the vault is a fairly good place in terms of social structure. Everyone is similar or equal in this sense, a perfectly designed symmetrical system and layout. The twist comes with the way of solving all conflicts and problems between dwellers. Oh yeah, by gambling. Chosen representatives of the parties that are involved or against each other are summoned in a meeting on the main atrium, and the winner earns the right to settle the dispute the way he sees fit, and as a collective too. Everyone has a chance, and Lady Luck smiles if you play your odds right. Everything came to an end in 2274. The vault was in the interest of Mr. House, so he gave an opportunity of restoring interaction with the surface. This quickly escalated in a dispute between most vault dwellers that were against opening the vault and a few that accepted the offer, so obviously this was taken to Lady Chance himself. The game lasted hours, and in the end, Mr. House-Siders won. He quickly overtook the vault and sealed off a part of the vault. The other, via negotiation, became an hotel. As an experiment that wanted to study behavior, the result was successful. Gambling actually took a great chunk of what other vaults had problems with, disputes, and gave them an opportunity. The vault easily lived through everything. The pivotal point was Mr. House was interested in them, and that luck himself favored him to take the vault. Everyone survived, no mortal infighting or the vault being abandoned, so gambling was proved a good way of dealing with social problems, not perfect by any chance, but way more useful than other vaults with different problem-dealing systems. Now we are talking only about normal vaults, but what about a king-sized vault? How would that work? Vault 31. This one is a bit peculiar by design. From the start, it was designed as a whole society of tri-heads, a tripartite society, I suppose you can call it. This was to serve as a buffer against threats in the situation of one of the vaults being compromised, so still two would remain, and even being able to support each other in other crises. But as vault tech being fishy as they commonly were, this could not end there, and had a couple of secret purposes. First one was that Vault 32 and 33 were exactly the same in terms of layout and resources, but for some reason, the residents of 32 and 33 were told that Vault 31 was exactly the same, just with better resources, food education, and higher quality life overall. This was the focus of a social experiment entitled Bud's Buds, and in this case, precedes the name of the designer, a Vault tech sales executive named Bud Askins. I still don't kinda get the point of the first bit of information, but the focal point was to get a population of loyal Vault tech employees that in the future would establish a monopoly. Also through the show, it is revealed that the vaults besides 31 were populated with people who possessed certain traits or genes that Bub Askins found desirable, and also would live normal life inside the fallout shelters. A bit specific, but he did accomplish that. We fast forward a bit, and we already have a lineage of super managers and a big and populated underground population. Every overseer has been a member of the Bud's Buds, and the candidate to overseer from 31 also continuously solves crisis situations to get a boost on popularity. We are still expecting more results from all this, but from all that we can see is that the experiment was a mild success. For the time we ended seeing the story, all the overseers are in the same team, and also we have uncovered a secret cryozone with Vault tech people that will inherit the Earth after cleaning the surface. So, in the end, all worked, at least to this point. Still don't forget that they lost one Vault out of the three, 32 from infighting, and a revolt. Some even took took care of themselves and others died of starvation. At the end, it was recovered, but those people are lost. We have talked a lot about human decisions, but a question raised in me, could an AI do it better? Vault 51. And here we are at the vault that was at the center of an event in Fallout 76, but that's not the point. We are talking about the story of the Vault experiment. One of the unique traits and focal point of the experiment was that at the moment the vault was sealed during the Great War, the Overseer was in fact not a person, a Zax supercomputer to be more exact, but actually his objective was to find the best leader over the 52 residents. With only the help of another assistant that was actually human, the first try was a democratic election. This failed miserably as the candidates voted for themselves, ruining the elections. Still, the computer didn't throw the towel and tried this time for a governor-style election, but still was pointless. This is where everything got wrong and all because the mouth of the assistant Baker said something not bad, but at the bad receptor, the Zax. After those failed elections, the Vault was full of feelings of hostility and even factionalism. After the third failed election, Baker said to Zax that for him, a leader was that person who stepped up in times of crisis, and that sealed the fate of the Vault. Zax took those words really deep, or as deep as a PC could at that moment, and started analyzing the possibility of choosing a leader via those crises. The only small detail would be that Zax himself would request them. So a new season started for the Vault habitants. One of this social experiments were to move some higher class citizens in purpose to uncomfortable, cramped living conditions. This resulting in one of those affected bombing a hole to escape, obviously with zero experience on that, blowing himself in the process and destroying that section. Everyone knew what happened and still Zax blocked the area and in a week or even less, opened this section again with new renovations, and everyone continued like nothing happened. A lot of those experiments slowly but surely destroyed bit by bit the Vault. Some of the most interesting were, for example, a time where the Dwellers had to win at gambling within some casino games to determine the Overseer. However, all the hostility and escalating tensions broke up in a fight between all the residents. This was followed up by a food crisis. So more violent confrontations were at hand. The purpose, at this time, was to make everyone explode in his emotions one way or another. Also, this marked the moment that some Dwellers started worshipping Zax as a literal good, so the de-evolution was escalating fast and dangerously. A lot of deaths happened. A mass shooting almost happened, but Baker killed the perpetrator just mere moments before. Still a lot of fights, fatalities, even a murder, and Zax continued just like nothing happened, making more crises to increase the anxious and irritable feelings of most resistant Dwellers. Just as they were on the verge of a breaking point, Zax started disrupting the residents' sleeping schedules. Because some alarms were altered, the final push of destruction was when, on August 6th, Omar Stevens found a body, Helen's body. This made the Vault fell in chaos the same day and started an all-versus-all fight. Ruben was the last man standing. Even Baker, who didn't want to kill anyone, was fatally wounded and died too. Ruben was named Overseer of the Vault in the process that Zax saw as Overseer Selection Attempt 37. Yeah, all that murder was only saw as this by the AI. Winter would be even more warm than that vision. At the end, Ruben became alcoholic and tried to live with the burden, but a few years later managed to escape via a crate programmed to be disposed of outside. He hacked that, later re-entered the Vault and got some supplies to create turrets. In the future, at some point after this, Ruben died, but before that got in contact with a resident of Vault 76, who explored the Vault and found multiple Scorchers who invaded the premises and, yeah, all the deceased of Vault 51. This experiment would be marked as a success or as a failure, depending on the perspective. For starters, the Vault was working fine until the assistant gave him that piece of concept of leadership, so the machine rapidly captured that idea and tried to get the most fit person to lead, killing everyone in the process but finding one. If that was the best or not, well, the machine saw him fit. I personally find this as an atrocious failure. Everyone died directly or indirectly by those experiments that the Zax tried, and hell, even after that. When Zax detected Vault 76 opening, kicked Ruben of his position and tried to put him in the next cycle of tryouts for Overseer, so he really never will be satisfied with choosing one if he still has standing options. We saw what an AI can do, and I will stick to humans, thanks, but what about a complete, twisted Vault of pure children being indoctrinated? This is a completely human idea, by the way. Vault 75. Oh boy, this one is, though. The general idea was the refinement of human genetics, and the process was as horrible as it sounds if you are a bit endorsed in history. Any reference? Well, first of all, devised by the devil himself, in this case, a so-called Dr. Braun, the Vault was intended to last a couple of generations or more, depending on results, but would be only opened by Vault Tech direct orders. They would be using methods such as genetic modifications, hormonal treatments, and yes, selective breeding. This was in order to create whole generations of children that were experimented even as embryos. We don't have official information about the overseer, but we know that it existed. All started in the same way as most vaults that fateful day of 2077. Every family had a student attending school, so they were designated that way. Everyone, including the teachers, got into the vault in time, and here is where everything shifted hardly. Upon entering, all the children were separated from the family and escorted to the atrium. At the same time, all those parents, and in general adults of the family, were executed by the security staff, and that was concealed as an orientation course. And here all that horror started. First of all, the children learned of the Up Top Land, a nickname for the wasteland, and also the program offered a long training that supposedly shaped them enough to be as strong and valiant enough to venture out into the wasteland and helps all those people. The graduation would be like a missionary-style mission of helping the Up Top Land, as this was supposed to happen at 18 years old. Now here's the harsh truth. The people that were intelligent and physically exceptional were took to a certain recluded palace after being convinced that they needed to take a vaccine, and we never heard about them again, as they contained the good genes. At 18 years old, those people were harvested. We may never know what that meant, but they vanished in that room. For the others, we had two diverging paths. If you were good enough to be considerate, fit, and intelligent, but not sufficient to be harvested, an offer happened to appear in their faces. If you were obedient enough, plus what we already talked about, they were recruited by the science team after graduating. The other side were contained by the people that weren't sufficient obedience, or directly didn't meet the standards, were executed at an extra ceremony of celebrating the celebration of the graduation. Yeah, I am not joking, that was the protocol. And incinerated after that. The results were a failure. The vault stayed strong, but at some point was abandoned. By 2287, none of the original inhabitants remained, and the vault was taken over by gunners to expand their operations. Reading some logs explain that while the results were good enough to keep going some generations, at some point the vault suffered an internal rebellion among the junior test subjects, and that they were aided by a graduate scientist, who, if you remember, was a victim of the protocol that wasn't good enough to be harvested and bad enough to be killed. None of them became a perfect soldier, and we have glimpses, but nothing clear about how the harvesting worked, so the system wasn't stable enough to create generation after generation of mindless soldiers that at the same time were perfectly intelligent. In my opinion, a plan that before starting had zero chance of working. Now we are talking about sinister experiments that tweaked the human mind with situations, but what if I told you that there exists a different approach to this? Making a person be the sole responsible of killing his own mind, that was Vault 77. Vault 77 originated in a promotional crossover comic to promote Fallout 3. This vault follows a simple and hard-to-grasp premise, sealing one man away with only a crate of puppets for company. How would that eat away the mind or the human is strong enough mentally to overcome this? Our victim, popularly known by Puppet Man, if you know a bit about this story, was sealed away in the 2077 on October 23rd. He initially believed that it was an honest mistake and pleaded to the terminals that other fucking people be let in. Obviously, as we already established, Vault Tech had this meticulously planned so the pleas were unheard and unanswered. This affected him a lot as the years of solitude became a heavy burden and took a heavy toll on his mental condition. He actually maintained a good quality of life. Well, he lived, and for the standards of the wasteland, that is a luxury. On February of 2079, believe me, the date is exact, he found a crate of hand puppets and started talking and playing with them immediately. As you can imagine, the mental condition and the puppets weren't the best combination. He quickly found himself lost in the games that he made, and only a month later, in March, he started to believe that the Vault Boy puppet talked to him, and this gave a push to his psychosis. That same night, Puppet Man himself tore apart the King Puppet and accused the Vault Boy of the murder. Yeah, I think we all know that this was destiny. And he talked himself up to leave because a heavy suspicion of something dark was overtaking his mind. Puppet Dog was planning something. Puppet Man left Vault 77 soon after, and the location remained uninhabited since then. I really hope that you can fully explore this place on the game, but sadly, the location remained unknown canonically, and the game obviously didn't have it. But what you can ding is a holotape and the lone Vault 77 jumpsuit in Paradise Falls. The audio talks a bit about the jumpsuit freaking the boys out because it has a story. They don't enter on details, so we will never know much more. We know certain facts about Puppet Man. For example, that he emerged into an arid desert with dull and tan sand. Also that he met the one-armed ghoul, and he kinda implies that Puppet Man himself was ghoulified too. But this was never clarified. It is implied that he is still alive wandering some part of the wasteland. On the capital wasteland, the jumpsuit has certain historic dark references, so at some point he must have gained some kind of fame, but we will never know for certain. Or at least, not to this day. The experiment was there, the effects of a person fully alone with puppets, and if the objective was to see if he was going to be crazy, then it's a success. If not, then maybe something broke down through the system because it happened, so if it was a success or not is left to interpretation by the player. Still a cool way to present a game via a comic and to see a bit in another life of the Vault life that lies there. Another cool fact is that, as I explained, we only found the jumpsuit and a holotape, and supposedly in canon that's all that we know about him, but still the Paradise Falls slavers are seriously, and I really mean it, seriously terrified of this guy, make you wonder what he did, or they say in him, to create that effect in people. And hey, nobody ever has found the puppet. So anyway, those were some of the Vault results of the experiments that Vault-Tec had done. If you like to see every hidden quest of Fallout New Vegas, click on the video in the screen.